My name is Lila Foster, and I'm 15. For most of my life, my father's obsession with hair had dictated everything about me. Not just my hair, my life, my choices, my body. My younger sister Emily and I lived under the constant scrutiny of his rules. Every strand of hair was measured, judged, and treated like currency in some twisted inheritance of beauty. When I was 9, I snuck into the bathroom with Rachel's sewing scissors. Rachel was my mother figure, though not my birth mother, and cut 5 inches off my hair. I just wanted freedom. Freedom from its weight, from the constant tugging on my skull, from the endless lectures about beauty and family honor. I didn't expect my father, Gregory, to react the way he did. He didn't shout at first. He just combed my hair, each stroke meticulous, slow, almost ritualistic. Then he stepped back, his face blank, and said, "You've destroyed something precious that can never be replaced." That night, he brought home a floor-length wig, heavier than anything I'd ever worn, longer than my hair ever had been, and forced me to wear it. My neck ached. I stumbled constantly. School became unbearable. I tripped over my own hair. My classmates stared. And every misstep felt like a punishment. For 18 months, I wore that wig, silent and trapped, until I learned to move through the world as though it weren't there. Emily, younger and gentler, had always been more compliant, but at 14, her hair was already a point of obsession for Gregory. I remember the day the swing set incident happened. Emily had swung too high. The chain wrapped around her long hair and cut her scalp. She screamed, choking on her own blood, while Gregory stared at the hair in the chain and muttered, "Do you have any idea how long it took to grow that?" It wasn't fear for her safety, it was grief over hair. Rachel had tried to intervene, pushing him aside so we could get Emily to the hospital. Doctors shaved her head to heal the wound, and at home, Gregory forced her to wear a wig daily. Even then, nightmares haunted her, and when she woke crying, he said she was dramatic and that beauty required sacrifice. I grew up carrying that weight, not just my hair, but the invisible chains of control. I was tired all the time, my body heavy, bruised, and weak. I fainted at school. I woke up unable to lift my arms. When Rachel suggested a doctor, Gregory dismissed her. "You just need vitamins," he'd say, his eyes cold. Then came the morning that would change everything. My gums bled while brushing. My strength failed me as I walked to the cafe for breakfast. I collapsed in front of the school nurse, my vision going dark. An ambulance came. Doctors ran tests. "Your daughter has leukemia," said Dr. Stevens. "Chemotherapy must start immediately, or she will die. Her hair will need to go." I looked at Gregory, hoping for some flicker of humanity. There was none. His face was blank, as though he was calculating, not my survival, but the cost of cutting my hair. Rachel gasped. Dr. Stevens's hands gripped her clipboard tightly. Silence stretched like concrete. Gregory finally spoke, his voice low but sharp. "Perhaps a second opinion is best. This doctor doesn't understand our family values." Family values, his obsession, my life. I was admitted that night. Rachel stayed by my side, her hair brushing the window chair as she tried to comfort me, trembling under the weight of fear and determination. Nurses prepared the chemotherapy IVs. My body felt alien, heavy, metallic, unreal. I wondered how much of my life had been stolen by hair, by fear, by Gregory's control. A woman named Claire Donovan from Hospital Social Services arrived, calm and firm. Short black hair, practical clothes, a voice that seemed to carve through the chaos. She explained the hospital could protect me from parental interference in life-saving treatment. Gregory tried to argue, to assert rights, to demand to be present. Claire remained resolute. Security was called. He raged outside the doors, but could not reach me. Rachel whispered as she held my hand, "You're safe. I won't let him take this from you." The days blurred into hours of treatment, medical procedures, and quiet reflection. I watched my hair fall into clumps, first under the nurse's clippers, then in the chemotherapy aftermath. Every lock was a symbol of freedom, of survival. When the nurse held the mirror after shaving the remainder, I barely recognized myself. Lila Foster, 15, hairless, fragile, but alive. Emily was brought to me under protection a few days later. She wept at the sight of my bald head, but when she finally touched her own shoulder-length hair, free of knots, she laughed in astonishment and liberation. Rachel cried too, but her tears were different. tears of grief and release. For the first time, we could talk openly about years of oppression, of control, of fear. That night, alone in the hospital room, I wrote in a blue diary Claire had suggested. I wrote about the nightly hair brushings, the wig punishment, Emily's accident, the weeks I felt weak and unloved. I wrote about the terror of chemotherapy, and oddly, about the strange sense of liberation I felt watching my hair fall away. Each word etched my survival into reality. For the first time, I felt I had a life worth fighting for. The first week after the hospital stay was a blur of doctors, nurses, and whispered conversations in hallways. Emily and I were moved to a transitional care apartment that Claire Donovan arranged. The space was small, just 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with faded floral curtains, but it was ours. For the first time in my 15 years, I could breathe without fear of a lecture about hair or beauty or obedience. Rachel had moved in as well, taking the couch in the living room and arranging our sparse belongings with quiet efficiency. She hummed softly as she unpacked, a rhythm that slowly stitched our fractured nerves back together. Emily explored the apartment like it was a new planet, brushing her now shoulder-length hair out of her eyes, twirling in circles, her laughter echoing against the bare walls. I watched from the bedroom doorway, my own bald head reflecting the fluorescent light. I wanted to laugh, to join her in that reckless freedom, but the weight of memory kept me still. Every movement, every glance backward reminded me of Gregory, the way he had obsessed over hair, as though it were the measure of our souls. At night, when the apartment fell silent except for the hum of the heater, Emily would whisper my name and climb into bed beside me. She was afraid of the dark, but I realized I was afraid too. Not of monsters under the bed, but of the past, of the shadow that Gregory had cast over our lives. I wrapped my arm around her small frame and felt a flicker of something dangerous and precious, hope. Rachel sat across from me at the tiny kitchen table one evening, a cup of tea steaming between her hands. "You're braver than you know," she said softly. Her eyes, sharp and tender, met mine. "You've survived more than anyone your age should have to, and now we fight." I didn't know what she meant at first. Fight? Against whom? Against my father? Against the memories? Against the fear that had been embedded in my blood since birth? Claire Donovan came by the next morning with papers. She had brought legal documents that would allow Rachel to act as our guardian, protecting us from Gregory's interference. She explained everything carefully, her voice a tether to reality. "He can't make decisions about your treatment. He can't take you back. He's lost that right. We need signatures, photographs, and affidavits, but you're safe." I looked at Emily. She nodded silently, her face pale but determined. I took a deep breath and signed my name on the dotted line. The pen felt heavy, like it carried the weight of years of oppression, control, and fear. But as the ink dried, I felt lighter. A door had closed behind us, and a new one was opening, small, fragile, but ours. Days turned into weeks. Rachel and I built routines. Mornings were for therapy, afternoons for homework, and evenings for quiet talks about music, books, or dreams of what life could be. Emily blossomed. She painted, she sang, she laughed without hesitation. And I began to feel normal, or at least something close to it. Yet every now and then, the past reached out. A text from school asking about parental signatures, a shadow in the hallway, a memory of a swing-set chain cutting through Emily's hair. I flinched, felt panic, wanted to curl up and disappear. But Rachel's steady presence, Emily's laughter, and Claire's unwavering protection became the shield I never had. One evening, a letter arrived, hand-delivered, bearing Gregory's signature. He demanded to see us. Rachel called Claire immediately. "Ignore it," Claire said firmly. "He doesn't have legal standing. He can yell, threaten, or write letters, but none of it changes the fact that you're safe here." Still, I could feel Emily trembling as she held my hand. "He wants us back?" she whispered. Her small fingers clutched mine tightly. "No," I said, swallowing a lump in my throat. "He wants control, but control doesn't work anymore, not over us." As the weeks progressed, I began to understand the strange duality of my feelings. I hated him for what he'd done, yet part of me mourned the lost years, the birthdays he missed, the hugs that never came, the childhood stolen in the name of appearances. And yet, mourning didn't mean surrender. Mourning meant acknowledgement, and acknowledgement was the first step to freedom. One night, Rachel pulled out a photo album from a closet. Pictures of Emily and me as toddlers, with our hair impossibly long, smiling at a camera that had never truly captured us, only a version that pleased Gregory. Rachel turned the pages slowly. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a photograph of the two of us, hair cascading, eyes wide. "You were beautiful then, but not because of him, because of you, always because of you." Tears blurred my vision. Emily pressed her forehead to mine. "I'm glad we're together," she whispered. For the first time, I believed her. But deep down, I knew the battle wasn't over. Gregory's obsession with control had been a hurricane in our lives, and hurricanes leave debris. Memories, scars, and legal battles still lay ahead, and yet, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: power. The power to choose, to protect, to survive. The power to reclaim my own life. And as I lay in bed that night, my bald head against the pillow, Emily curled beside me, I whispered into the dark, "We're going to be okay. We have to be." Little did I know, the storm wasn't finished. It was only gathering. The days grew longer, yet every morning brought the same gnawing anxiety. Emily had started school again, her small backpack bouncing as she walked down the hallway. But even in laughter and chatter, I could see the shadow in her eyes, the echo of our father's obsession. Rachel had become the anchor of our lives. She didn't just provide structure. She became our voice when we felt silenced. She navigated phone calls with social workers, meetings with therapists, and the occasional legal consultation with Claire. And yet, no matter how much control we reclaimed, the sense of being watched lingered. Then, one evening, everything shifted. A manila envelope slid under the apartment door. I froze. Emily crouched behind me, peeking with wide, fearful eyes. The envelope was thick, heavy, and unmistakably official-looking. Inside, I found photographs. Photos of Emily and me, of us leaving the school, walking in the park, even sitting in the apartment kitchen. Each picture was marked with the date and time. At the bottom, in thick black marker, was a message. "You cannot escape me. I am always watching." Emily gasped, clinging to me. He followed us?" I felt a cold knot in my stomach. This wasn't just about hair or control anymore. This was obsession. And obsession doesn't stop at boundaries. Rachel took the envelope gently from my trembling hands. "We'll call Claire," she said, her voice calm but firm, "and the police. This ends now." The following day, Claire arrived with a law enforcement escort. She had filed restraining orders and pressed charges for harassment. Gregory's threats were becoming concrete, and finally, the law was on our side. But even as the paperwork was signed, the weight didn't lift completely. Fear isn't so easily erased. I found myself standing in front of Emily's bedroom mirror, scissors in hand. Her hair had grown past her shoulders again, and I hesitated. It was our little rebellion, our quiet defiance against the control that had marked our lives. I wanted her to feel free, not trapped. "Do you want to cut it short?" I asked. Emily shook her head. "No, I want it long. I want him to see that he can't take it from me." Her words struck me like a lightning bolt. She understood more than her years should allow. This wasn't just hair, it was identity, ownership of self, freedom. And for the first time, I realized how strong we had become together. Weeks passed, and Gregory's presence retreated to the shadows, but he was still out there, a specter we couldn't see. Emily and I learned to breathe in our small apartment, to reclaim the rituals of normal life, making pancakes on Sunday mornings, walking to the park without fear, talking late into the night about dreams of the future. Yet even in our small victories, I couldn't shake a lingering thought. He might never stop. The obsession that had haunted our childhood had evolved, and though the law could protect us physically, it couldn't erase the scars he had left in our minds. One evening, Emily whispered, brushing her hair behind her ear, "Do you think he'll ever come back?" I took her hand, feeling the warmth, the life, the resistance in her small fingers. "Maybe. But he won't control us anymore, not ever. We're stronger than he thinks." Rachel appeared in the doorway carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. She smiled gently, a warrior in plain clothes. "And if he tries, we'll face it together. No one stands alone here." As I watched Emily sip her cocoa, her eyes bright with the first real sense of safety she'd known, I realized something crucial. He had underestimated us. He had underestimated the power of love, resilience, and choice. And though the storm might return, though shadows might loom, we had learned to navigate the dark. Together, we were unbreakable. That night, as I lay in bed beside Emily, I whispered into the dark, "We are free, and we will stay free." But somewhere, beyond the city lights, Gregory was moving, watching, planning, and the fight for control, though shifted, though delayed, was far from over. The following weeks were a tense dance between normal life and vigilance. Emily and I tried to pretend that everything was fine, but the photos, the messages, and the lingering memory of his obsession clung to us like a shadow. Every knock on the door made my heart leap. Every stranger in the hallway made me scan for cameras, for hidden eyes. Then one evening, I came home to find our apartment door ajar. Panic surged through me. "Emily!" I called, my voice shaking. She wasn't there. My legs felt like lead as I rushed inside. The living room was empty, but on the coffee table lay a single black envelope, heavier than the last. I tore it open and froze. Inside were two things: a photograph of Emily, sitting in her school classroom, looking directly at the camera. A note in familiar thick black marker. "She's mine now. Come alone if you want her back." I felt a sickening mixture of fear and fury. This wasn't just harassment. This was kidnapping in the making. My mind raced. There was no hesitation. I grabbed my phone and called Rachel immediately. Rachel arrived within minutes, her presence calm but unyielding. "We're not going in blindly," she said firmly. "Claire will contact the authorities. This is now a law enforcement matter." As I waited, pacing the small apartment, I felt Emily's hand slip into mine. She had returned quietly from hiding in her room, clutching her backpack. "I'm not scared," she said softly. Her words struck me. Despite everything, she had absorbed the courage I had fought so hard to nurture in her. When Claire arrived with police officers, the plan was set. They would trace Gregory's location, intercept him if he attempted to take Emily, and finally confront him with undeniable authority. I stayed close to Emily, feeling the tension pulse through us both. Hours later, the call came. Gregory had been caught near a remote warehouse, preparing to leave with Emily. The officers moved swiftly, and within minutes he was handcuffed and restrained, his obsession finally contained, though not erased. I watched from the sidelines as Emily ran into my arms, sobbing. "You got me back," she whispered. "I'll always get you back," I replied, holding her tightly. "Always." That night, back in our apartment, the city outside felt alive in a new way. The shadows still lingered, but the fear had lifted. We had faced the storm and survived. Rachel sat across from me, sipping her tea quietly. "You've both grown stronger than anyone could imagine," she said. "This isn't the end. It's a beginning." I looked at Emily, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Yes," I whispered, "a beginning. One where we choose freedom every single day." Even in sleep, Emily curled beside me with an unshakable trust. For the first time, I felt it fully. We were safe, together, and unbroken. And though I knew life would throw challenges our way, I understood something I had never truly felt before. We were no longer defined by fear. We were defined by love, resilience, and choice. As the city lights flickered outside the window, I allowed myself a small, tentative smile. Tomorrow would come, and with it, the certainty that our lives and our spirits belonged only to us. Months passed, and life slowly stitched itself back together. The apartment, once a place of tension and fear, had become a sanctuary. Emily's laughter echoed through the rooms again, no longer interrupted by anxiety or the shadow of her father's control. One morning, sunlight spilled across the living room. I watched Emily sit by the window, scissors in hand, carefully trimming her hair to a length that felt right for her. She paused, looked up, and smiled at me. "Mom, I think this is perfect," she said. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. "It's beautiful, Emily. You chose it." And that was the turning point. Every strand she cut symbolized more than hair. It was a reclamation of her body, her choices, her freedom. I realized then that the control her father had tried to impose could never take root again. Rachel visited often, her presence a steady anchor. We shared quiet dinners, stories, and sometimes long silences, the kind that don't need words. She had become family in every sense, a reminder that love and trust could be built, even in the aftermath of fear. I also began to rebuild myself, not just as a protector, but as a woman who had survived trauma and emerged stronger. I enrolled in evening classes, pursued long-delayed dreams, and reconnected with old friends. Every step was a declaration. I was no longer defined by the past. One evening, Emily and I walked hand in hand along the quiet streets of our neighborhood. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of late autumn. She glanced up at me. "Do you think we'll ever have to be scared again?" she asked softly. I squeezed her hand. "Fear might touch us sometimes, but we've learned how to face it together. And as long as we do, nothing can ever control us again." Emily smiled and let go of my hand to skip ahead, her hair catching the wind in loose, free waves. I watched her, feeling a surge of pride and hope. The years of fear and control were behind us. Ahead lay choice, love, and freedom. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely, unshakably at peace. We were not victims. We were survivors. We were free. And together, we were unstoppable.